There's a moment quiet, calm, when your silence speaks louder than any goodbye. It's not the anger they remember. It's not the fight. It's the stillness that echoes, the presence that fades without a word and leaves everything shaking. In its absence, when you step back calmly, not to punish, but to protect your peace, something powerful begins to shift. They feel it. Not because you said anything, but because you finally said nothing. You didn't beg, you didn't chase. Simply disappeared from the emotional stage. And suddenly, the spotlight turns inward. Now they sit alone with the silence you left behind. Like Marcus Aurelius once said, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You didn't retaliate, you returned to yourself. They thought your presence was guaranteed. But when you withdraw, like the warmth from a flame, the cold sets in and it's not dramatic, it's simply undeniable. That absence, it teaches, it humbles, it haunts. They say silence is weakness, that if you don't fight, you lose. But here's the truth. Chasing doesn't win love, it only proves fear. And you, guided by clarity, chose stillness over desperation. Seneca reminds us sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And in your case, stepping back peacefully, without noise, is the highest form of strength. Because you chose not to explain your worth, you chose to embody it. Silence creates space, and space reveals truth. The noise is gone. Now they must sit with what remains their own reflection, the missing energy, the memory of your steady presence. So don't doubt your decision. Don't question the quiet. When you release what disturbs your peace, you don't lose anything. You regain yourself. They always told you that love means effort, that if you just try harder, explain more, prove yourself, they'll stay. But that's a lie dressed up as devotion, because sometimes the more you give, the more they take in, the less they see. You could have kept talking. You could have argued your value. But instead, you chose silence, not because you had nothing to say, but because your peace spoke louder than their confusion. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." You found freedom the moment you stopped chasing what was never yours to carry. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped rescuing someone who never planned to meet you halfway. It's strange, isn't it? How your absence reveals more than your presence ever could. You were always there, steady, loyal, real, and yet invisible. But now that you're no longer available, suddenly, they notice. It's not because you forced it, but because you withdrew the very thing they took for granted. Stillness is gravity. It pulls without noise, and it holds weight without effort. And your calm presence, once overlooked, now lingers in their world like a missing piece they can't replace. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You lived that. You walked away not to be cruel, but to be clear. And in doing so, you became unforgettable, not because you chased, but because you let go with dignity. So when they wonder why the silence hurts so much, remind yourself, it's not the words that matter. The energy you no longer offer. You gave them everything, your presence, your attention, your patience. But now you've stepped back. And for the first time, they're forced to feel the space you used to fill. They once thought your consistency was just background noise always. They're always forgiving, always available. But the silence now, it's not quiet. It's deafening. You didn't stop caring. You stopped rescuing. You stopped overreaching into a connection that refused to meet you halfway. You didn't leave. In anger, you left in truth. When you step back calmly, they begin to realize what they overlooked. That you were the steady pulse in their chaos. The calm within their storm. And now, without you, things feel empty. Seneca said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." And sometimes the most courageous act is to say nothing to. Simply remove your energy from a place that can't honor it. They'll question your silence. They'll replay conversations. They'll search for clues. But you owe them no explanation, because stillness doesn't need to justify itself. It just exists. Sand transforms everything around it. Let them feel the quiet. Let them confront the truth that your words once protected them from. And remember, your peace is not a reaction, it's your power. Most people fear stepping back not because they fear losing others, but because they fear confronting their own worth without validation. You've been taught that silence is dangerous, that if you don't explain yourself, you'll be forgotten. But the Stoic knows. Silence is where truth reveals itself. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." You've chosen to be someone grounded in self-respect, not desperation. They say, if you stop trying, they'll forget you. But let me ask, kind of love forgets you the moment you stop reaching? What kind of connection survives only when you're the one holding all the weight? That isn't love. That's imbalance. And your silence, your calm, exit corrects it. Now they're left alone with a reflection they can't escape. No more emotional cushion. No more safety net. It's just the echo of your stillness. And in that echo, a mirror appears. One that shows them what you gave and what they never gave back. Stillness doesn't scream. It exposes. So if you're wondering whether they care, don't ask. Watch. Because the only love worth having is the kind that moves toward you when you finally stop moving toward it. Let your silence do what your words never could. Let it teach. Let it clarify. Let it reveal. You didn't slam the door. You didn't shout. You just became unavailable calmly. And that's what makes the silence unforgettable. Most expect anger when you leave. They expect noise, resistance, a final scene. But when you walk away with grace, without needing revenge or recognition, you confuse them. You shift the pattern. Now they sit in a space that once glowed with your warmth, and it's just still. No drama, no fight, just your absence echoing in a room they thought would never go quiet, Marcus Aurelius wrote. How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? You didn't react. You didn't burn the bridge. You simply stopped crossing it. This kind of detachment isn't indifference, it's evolution. You've grown past the need to prove your worth. And that unsettles those who relied on your constant presence. Now they wonder, where did the light go? But you're not lost. You've just reclaimed your peace. Let this be your reminder. Walking away without anger is not weakness. It's clarity. And clarity doesn't chase. It chooses. So stand. Still, let your calm unsettle the chaos. Know that your stillness is not a pause. It's your power. When your energy quietly exits, something powerful begins. Not because you intended to cause a reaction, but because your absence creates contrast. They didn't notice your attention until it disappeared. They didn't feel your warmth until the room turned cold. You were the silent source of comfort, the unspoken presence they relied on but never acknowledged. And now the silence leaves them wondering. Lao Tzu once said, "Silence is a source of great strength, and in your case it becomes a source of revelation." You weren't loud, but you were steady. You didn't demand, but you gave freely. And now that it's gone, they feel every inch of the space you once filled. They scroll, they linger. They ask others about you, but not out loud. Ego won't let them admit what their heart already knows. You mattered more than they let on. This is not revenge. This is not manipulation. This is energetic truth. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. And now the roles shift, not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing altogether. Let them wonder. Let your stillness echo. Because what you offer isn't noise, it's presence. And true presence doesn't beg to be seen. It simply becomes impossible to forget. It's not the goodbye that lingers, it's the silence that follows. When you withdraw your energy completely, you don't just leave space, you leave impact. They didn't lose you in a fight. They lost you in the quiet. That's what keeps them awake. Not your words, not your exit, but the fact that you stopped giving without making a sound, Seneca said. Withdraw into yourself as far as you can. You did just that. You didn't make a scene. You just walked away with your truth intact. Now they're left with questions. Endless ones. They reread messages. They replay old moments. But the final chapter, you never gave it. And that's why their mind keeps writing. This is not cruelty. It's clarity. You refuse to hand them a tidy ending. You didn't know them. That what you owed was to yourself, to protect your peace, to honor your silence. They post, they smile, they pretend. But inside, they're unraveling, because they never thought you'd walk away quietly. They thought you'd always explain, always return, but you didn't. And that silence? That's the loudest truth of all. Let it echo. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't demand closure. You simply became still. And in that stillness, something shattered not the bond, but their illusion of control. People often mistake attention for love. They get used to your effort, your words, your presence, until one day, it's gone. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's what you've done. You've reclaimed your energy. You stopped reacting. You stepped into power. Your silence broke the rhythm. No more emotional responses. No more clarifying your worth. Now they face themselves without your reassurance. They once held the mere feeling seen, admired, desired. But now you've taken it back, and they're left without a reflection they can control. That's why they feel the absence so deeply, because it's not rejection, it's revelation. Your stillness forces them to confront what they ignored. Your value was never loud, but it was always real. Let your calm be the lesson. Let your silence speak truths they weren't ready to hear. You didn't close the door with anger. You didn't disappear in bitterness. You simply became unavailable with peace in your heart. And that's what makes it powerful. They expected you to chase, to reach out, to explain yourself. But this time you didn't. And that quiet exit, no drama, no confrontation, spoke louder than any final speech. Being unavailable without resentment shows emotional maturity. It says, "I respect myself enough to walk away from what no longer values me." They feel it now, not because you shouted, but because you stopped showing up. No texts, no explanations, just space. And that space reveals everything they refused to see when you were present. You're not avoiding them, you're honoring yourself. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." You're not mirroring their neglect or choosing dignity. Let this be your reminder. Peace doesn't beg. Peace doesn't explain. It just leaves and in its absence. It teaches, so stay still. Stay gone. Let your silence become the mirror they can't look away from. The moment your energy leaves, something stirs in their soul. Not because you forced a reaction, but because your silence created a question they can't answer. You were always there, listening, noticing, showing up. But now, nothing. No check-ins. No warmth. Just stillness. And it rattles them. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." You embodied your worth not by speaking louder, but by stepping back completely. They walk into rooms that once felt full and now feel hollow. They scroll through messages, searching for a trace of what you gave so freely, but that energy is going not to punish but to protect. You withdrew from a space that never truly honored you. And now they face the silence they once ignored. The truth is, people don't miss you. They miss how your presence made them feel. But it's too late to realize the light when the flame is already out. Let them wonder, let them search, let them sit with the void, because what they feel now is not punishment, it's revelation. Your calm exit became the loudest chapter of the story, and that chapter is closed. They never expected your silence to speak so loudly. But now, every quiet moment echoes with everything you once gave on no longer do. You were consistent, grounded, always available. And because of that, they stopped paying attention. Assumed your energy was endless. But now that it's gone, the weight of your absence is unbearable. The Stoics taught us that we don't control others, we only control ourselves. You've chosen to control your peace, to guard your energy, to walk away with strength instead of noise. Their mind is restless now, trying to fill in the blanks your silence left behind. They remember the way you cared, the effort you made, the love you gave without being asked. But you're no longer there. And the space you left behind has become their lesson. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. And now they're learning that what they judged as ordinary was actually rare. Let your absence keep teaching. Let your silence remind them. Never forget, your energy is a gift, not a guarantee. You didn't vanish to hurt them. You withdrew to find yourself. And in doing so, you broke a pattern that was never serving you. They were used to the noise, the checking in, the second chances. But now, it's just silence. No more explaining. No more proving. No more waiting. And it's in that quiet space that the truth rises. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You've lived that truth. You no longer stay where peace doesn't grow. You no longer give where your value is overlooked. Now they're left alone with the consequences of comfort. They mistook your presence for permanence. But now they realize it was your choice all along. There's no anger in your absence, only wisdom, only strength. Only a new standard that says, I will not chase what runs. What drifts? I will not fight for what should flow. Let them feel it. Let the silence speak. 'Cause sometimes the greatest clarity comes when you no longer fill the silence for someone who never earned your voice. They'll replay every moment not because you reminded them, but because you stopped. That's the paradox of presence. When it's constant, it's overlooked. But when it's gone, it becomes unforgettable. You didn't disappear to prove anything. You walked away because peace became more important than presence. You no longer needed to be seen, you needed to be whole. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And you chose not to waste another second on someone who couldn't recognize your worth until it vanished. Now they sit in the silence you left behind, not understanding how the person who once gave so much could suddenly give nothing. But that's the lesson. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They misunderstood your patience for permanence. You've evolved. You've outgrown the cycle. And now, if they return to a version of you that no longer waits, no longer begs, and no longer needs to be needed. Let this be your closing truth. Your energy was the gift. Your absence is the awakening. And that, my friend, is the legacy of walking away with grace.